Hi, this is Brian Costin from Americans for Prosperity, Illinois. We're coming to talk to you today about a big rally that we're going to be having tomorrow in the Illinois General Assembly. It's about HB 2827, a homeschool overregulation bill that we're all really concerned about. And we're going to give you a little bit of a preview today, talk about what we're going to expect to see tomorrow. There's going to be a committee hearing. And we're going to give you some particulars about the bill, and Will's going to answer some question. And tomorrow, Rebecca is going to be my co-host of all of the festivities over at the Capitol building, starting really early at 6:30 in the morning. We're excited about that. It's going to be a very busy day for everyone. And Rebecca, I wanted you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, Brian, thanks so much. We're looking really forward to live streaming from the Capitol. Everything HB 2827. We'll be doing live interviews inside the Capitol and outside. But today we have Will Estrada with us. We want to ask him some questions the day before the big day. And Will, you are the senior counsel of HSLDA. What exactly is your role, and what role have you played in this bill?
Well, it is great to be on with all of you. I'm here at the offices of our friends from Americans for Prosperity here in Illinois, right across from the street from the Capitol and the governor's mansion. So it's great to be on the ground in Springfield, Illinois. So as you said, I'm senior counsel at the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. So I'm one of our attorneys. HSLDA was founded in 1983 when homeschooling was illegal in many of the 50 states, but not, interestingly enough, in Illinois, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Since then, we have seen homeschooling become legal in all 50 states, and really since the COVID-19 pandemic, homeschooling has become mainstream. And so it's very kind of disturbing and disconcerting to see HB 2827 introduced and being pushed in the Illinois House. Illinois would become the first state in our nation to go backwards on home education freedom and private school freedom if HB 2827 were to become law.
Great. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the bill, starting with there are some extraordinary penalties that come along with non-compliance of this bill. What are your thoughts on that, and how are homeschoolers reacting?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it started off as a 45-page bill. The HCA 1 amendment is over 60 pages now. And probably the most disturbing part of this is the criminalization of the failure to file a piece of paperwork. So as everyone knows, here in Illinois, since 1950, the landmark case of the Illinois Supreme Court, People versus Levison, homeschooling has been free. Now, it's not been unregulated. The People versus Levison decision was very careful to stress that parents still had to educate their children. They still had to teach them the required subjects, and the burden of proof was on the parents if they were ever brought to court for allegations that they were not educating their children, that the burden of proof was on the parents to show proof and evidence that they were educating their children. So the bill's premise that homeschooling is unregulated and people can educationally neglect or abuse their children is just a false premise. But the most disturbing part of this, it's on section 25 of both the bill and HCA 1, the amendment that's going to be heard in committee tomorrow morning. Let me read what it says, because many of the supporters of this bill are saying, oh, there's nothing bad in it. It's just a simple reporting so we know how many homeschoolers there are. And that's not true. Here's what section 25 says in paragraph A. If the homeschool administrator for a child enrolled in a homeschool program has not submitted to the principal of the applicable public school or to the applicable school district a homeschool declaration form pursuant to section 20, the child shall be considered truant under section 26.1 of the school code, and the homeschool administrator, that's you, mom or dad, for the child shall be subject to the penalties set forth in sections 26-10 and 26-11 of the school code, end quote. These are criminal Class C misdemeanor charges. So it's saying right here in the text of the bill, you could go to jail for up to 30 days, $500 fine, criminal conviction on your record. We all know that when that happens, DCFS gets involved as well. Children could potentially be temporarily removed from their homes and put into temporary foster care. Now, let me give you some context here. There are quite a few states in the nation where homeschoolers do have to file paperwork with the school district or with the State Department of Education. Not a single one, not even New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, or Rhode Island, which are the most highly regulated states in the nation, not a single one puts in their text of their homeschool statute that you're going straight to prison, basically, if you don't file that piece of paperwork. In fact, when we look at how Illinois public schools handles truancy, there are many kind of off ramps so that families are not going to prison. This is a criminalization of paperwork issue. We hear a lot of politicians in Springfield and all around the country talking about trying to reduce the number of families and vulnerable populations and vulnerable communities that are caught up in the criminal justice system. It is deeply disturbing to see HB 2827 attempt to go in a completely different direction.
Yeah, we totally agree, Will. Talking to a lot of homeschool families, they feel like this bill is coming out of nowhere. So, do you have any background as to what basis they're bringing this bill up on?
It's a great question. I said that the bill was premised on a false premise of homeschooling being unregulated, but there's one other false premise this bill is premised on, and that is that children being educated by their parents at home are more at risk of abuse or neglect. It's a completely false premise. There have been numerous studies that have been peer reviewed, looked at by demographers, looking at the data, and it actually shows that homeschoolers are at the same risk as public and private school peers or less risk of abuse and neglect. And particularly in a state like Illinois, where we have all seen the well documented and just tragic abuse, particularly sexual abuse, that has gone on in Chicago public schools. There have been multi-million-dollar lawsuits filed. There have been teachers and administrators going to prison. It's deeply disturbing and a completely false premise to try and go after the homeschool community because of a false premise that these children are at greater risk of abuse and neglect. I'm going to stress that tomorrow as we talk with legislators and as we talk with the media, that this is a completely false premise. The parents, the moms and dads who pull their children out of public school, maybe because of bullying or their kids are falling behind, they do so because they love their children. Home education is not easy. It's actually easier. I'm a homeschool graduate. I'm a homeschool dad. My wife and I see firsthand the labor of love and the sacrifices that it takes for parents to be able to educate their children at home. And so it's far easier to put your kids in public and private school. The parents who choose to put their children in, pull them out of public school or private school and home educate them, they're doing it because they love their kids. And it is, I think, insulting actually to make this false representation that homeschool children are at greater risk of abuse and neglect.
Will, this bill goes beyond just regulating homeschoolers. It impacts public schools. It increases the amount of mandates on them. It also affects non-public parochial schools, private schools. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and why do we need to be worried about it even if we aren't homeschoolers?
Yeah, so the bill is primarily directed at the home education community. So it was even more kind of shocking to see it also going after basically any non-public education system in the state of Illinois. The bill states basically three requirements on traditional brick and mortar private schools. There are no religious exemptions. This will apply to sectarian schools, Jewish schools, Muslim schools, Christian schools, Hindu schools. This will apply to secular private schools. Here are the three requirements. The first one is that these traditional brick and mortar private schools will have to register with the Illinois State Board of Education. Currently, that's optional. There are many private schools that register. There are many that don't, particularly in the faith community. So first one is registration. Second requirement is the bill says every single teacher and administrative person in a traditional brick and mortar private school has to have a high school diploma. The janitor will have to have a high school diploma. This disproportionately hurts people in the immigrant communities, people in the lower income communities who are working hard, who maybe are saving up or working towards their GED, who suddenly will have to be fired if 2827 becomes law in the state of Illinois. And the third thing it does is it puts a massive data collection and data reporting, basically a database requirement on all private schools of the parents and of the kids. And look, in this time in our nation's history, whenever the government wants database on families, on private education, nothing good comes out of government databases. There could be data breaches, there could be other nefarious reasons as well.
Could you walk us through what the committee hearing is going to look like?
That's a great question. So the first thing to know is it's 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow on Wednesday, March 19th. We're going to be, as we already said, we'll be live streaming starting at 6:30. You're going to see a lot of cheerful, excited homeschoolers, private schoolers. You'll probably see some sleepy kids as well and people who haven't had their coffee yet. But we're going to be bussing people in. I've heard that there could be as many as 500 people. There could even be more who are going to be here at the Capitol tomorrow. It's a small committee room. It's 122 right in the Capitol. So we're probably going to fill it up very quickly. And there'll be overflow in the hallways. There'll be our good law enforcement out there. So follow their directions, look for the signs. We want to show that homeschooling and private schooling works, that we love our kids, that we love our country, that we love Springfield and our legislators. They work hard. And so we're going to be there to make our voices heard. Then there's a bunch of bills on the docket. We don't know when HB 2827 will come up. There's a good chance it could be the first bill, but it could be pushed towards later in the day. They have a hard stop for lunch. That's when the session comes in on the House floor. So we're just going to have to kind of see what happens. We're going to be showing them no matter when the bill comes up, whether it's first thing, whether it's near the end of the committee hearing, that homeschool freedom works, that private school freedom works, that we love our kids, that we should not criminalize paperwork issues here in the state of Illinois. So that's what we know. Tune in. We're going to have people kind of explaining the process of what's going on. It's going to be an exciting day. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to it as well. A little bit more on how people can get involved for tomorrow. The Illinois General Assembly website is ilga.gov. You can go on that website. You can look at the bill. You can look at the witness slips. I think as of this moment, there is over 8,000 people who have filed witness slips. That's a huge number. That really expresses to the legislators that there is a huge amount of interest in the public in regards to this bill. You usually don't see something like that. You can add your name to the witness slips as well. Also, just to give a little bit about the process, we're at the very beginning stages of this. I mean, hopefully, ideally, it doesn't pass out of the committee and dies. There needs to be 5 stages that this bill goes through in order to become law. First to the House committee, then it would have to pass the House, then it would go over to the Senate, it would be assigned to a committee, and then it would have to be passed out of that committee, go to the floor of the Senate, be passed favorably there as well, and then go to the governor. So tomorrow is a really, really important day. We need people to get involved. Call your legislators on the phone, file a witness slip, send emails, come down to the Capitol tomorrow if you're able to. It's not often you see this many people get engaged on an issue, and it can have a big difference. In previous years, I say probably every 5 to 7 years, we see an attempt to regulate homeschool in the state of Illinois. In the past, if there's a big showing, it really sends a message to legislator, tells them hands off. And we're hoping that that happens this time too. On the flip side, we have to be cautious because there's more bill sponsors this time than there has been in the past. So we're a little bit more concerned and have a sense of urgency to try to beat this as soon as we possibly can. So I just wanted to say thank you to Will. Thank you to Rebecca. We're going to have an amazing day tomorrow down at the Capitol. Please join us, Springfield, Illinois. Again, my name is Brian Costin from Americans for Prosperity. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all tomorrow.